Very well, guys. Welcome to the final video of this lesson. We will just concluding with John Wycliffe's Bible and the use of Latin by religion and how it became some sort of a scandal. We already mentioned about certain contents of the Bible that were supposed to be there but that were not, and most of the power of the church at the time resided in the ignorance of people. Ignorance in terms of skills themselves, like inability to read and write, but also the inability to understand or to be sure about what were the contents of the Bible. So I mentioned that there were a lot of different things that were supposed to be there, such as like indulgences. That it's well, I don't know if you know what is that. What you are supposed to pay in order to get to heaven, right? So if you're going to die and you believe that you committed a lot of sins and maybe didn't made up for them, so what you could do was to say to the church, okay, I'm going to inherit a big amount of money, or even sometimes all my money or all my properties when I die, so I can sort of guarantee to go to heaven, right? And well, that was the myth, or let's say the idea is that that was in the Bible. It is not. It's not there. And there are a lot of different things that are supposed to be there and are not. No, so for example, if you think about the Genesis and the story of Adam and Eve, well, there is popular knowledge that Eve bit the apple and gave it to Adam. But well, if you read, let's say carefully, the Genesis, that is the first book of the Bible, you will see that there's no mention of an apple over there. And well, there are a lot of different things. So of course, the church was really, really worried about this, and they persecuted John Wycliffe. He was able to finish most of his work, not all of it, but a good part, and to disseminate some of his manuscripts and translations. And well, that was really important for humankind. Yes, because it was probably one of the first times that at least that we have record of a person translating the sacred scriptures. Well, eventually he was caught, he was condemned, and he was killed because of this, right? Like he was labeled a heretic, and because of that, well, he died eventually. It is kind of funny, nevertheless, that eventually, years later, when the church decided that, well, in the end it was okay to translate the Bible and disseminate it among people, well, they used his manuscripts in order to finish the translation, right? So basically they kill him for it, and then eventually they just simply apologize and say, well, he was right, sorry to have killed him, oops. But well, eventually it was fine, and he was able to, or let's say that his translation was able to reach people. Now, this is important, and this is taken as a work of literature, because you know that either if you're a believer or not, there are a lot of stories in there, a lot of narrations, a lot of cautionary tales, a lot of poetry. I don't know if you know that the Bible has a lot of poetry, and even it has a really interesting part that it's related to erotic poetry, right? It's exchanges between husband and wife, and how they are able, or they are supposed to satisfy each other at a sexual level. And maybe some people, if you don't read the Bible and I tell you that, you would say, that in the Bible, that it's impossible. But yeah, it's in there. So because of that, it is considered a good, important, and a good example of what could be the literature of the time, and also because we have a lot of different expressions that are extracted from there and that we use in our daily life, even if you are a believer or not. No? So we have, if you go to the slide number 28, you will see some examples of those, such as, for example, an eye for an eye. Yes, when you're talking about vengeance, that you are supposed to receive in compensation whatever you were taken or was taken from you. So there is an expression extracted from the Bible, right? We have the word, for example, Philistine. This is a little bit elaborated. Nevertheless, it is used. You call a person a Philistine when he or she is a traitor, a person you cannot really trust, somebody who is not trustworthy and generally a bad person, right? So that's it. We have certain things related to, for example, sins, no, like envy, or some other things like your brother's or my brother's keeper, that is related to the story of Abel and Cain. So when Cain kills Abel, and he tries to hide from God, and God asks him, "What is your brother?" And he says, "I'm not my brother's keeper." Well, this is an expression that maybe not so common for some of you, but it's common enough to be used for some people outside the religious context, and it's basically to say another person, I'm not his mother. I don't know where he is, referring to either your brother or anybody else. Yes, if somebody asks you about a person and you answer that, it means that it's not my business. I don't know anything about that. So with that, we can close these things related to the period. I would like to add a final thing, and is this about the role of women. So let's remember that in the previous period, Anglo-Saxon women were completely sexualized, reproductory machines. Their opinion didn't matter. Nothing. Okay. Well, unfortunately for this period, women were not better. Well, they were a little better, just a little. Yeah, but their role was not recognized or respected or anything like that. So, if you remember many of the stories about chivalry and battles with armors and knights and all these different things, there's always like a princess, no? So let's say that in this period, women were damsels in distress, girls who required to be saved, right? It was like the prize sometimes, yes? A very beautiful girl, or a very beautiful member of royalty also, because it was not even a regular girl, no? In order to be valid somehow, or to be respectable, or to be desirable, well, you normally had to be at least part of royalty, and that's why in many fairy tales we see these princesses, which actually it was reproduced eventually by Disney, no? And in which they simply marry the man in the end. Sometimes they marry a man they don't even know. Yeah, the guy just was able to vanquish a dragon, or to vanquish another villain or another knight, and they were used as somehow a prize. Also, let's say that there is a lot more literature, I mean poetry, stories, and plays about women, and normally they sort of exalt their attributes, their physical attributes, how beautiful they are, their eyes, their hair, their let's say their face, some very general facts that, of course, are not really erotic. Yes, at some point probably somebody did that, but remember that we're talking about a society that is really closed and really that really punishes desire, right? So maybe it was an idealistic love or something similar, in which that was the way in which women were described or praised. So with that, we can close this period. Okay. Well, my friends, I would like to tell you now about the assignment number one that we're going to have. Oh, I think I'm going to name the assignments with consecutives. Okay. So if I remember well, this will be the assignment number 3, just to avoid confusion, because it will be, well, anyway, I think I'm going to put it as a consecutive. So let's call this assignment number 3. And here comes a good thing now. I am going to give you 2 texts, and I'm going to ask you to classify them as either Anglo-Saxon, Middle English, or none of them. Okay, so I'm just going to publish that in the assignment, and you're going to have to read them, and decide one by one if they belong maybe to the Anglo-Saxon period, maybe to the Middle English, or it's very likely that they don't belong to any of those. Maybe they are from another period that we have not yet taken or studied, right? So please do that, and I am going to ask you that for each reading, for each text, you provide a minimum of 3 reasons, okay? So if you classify the first one as the Anglo-Saxon one, you say, okay, because of this, this, and this. Remember that you have a lot of different reasons that you can use. Linguistic reasons, the language, the vocabulary, the themes, suffixes, grammar, role of women, topics, authors, style. Well, there are a lot of different things, right? So if you think hard, probably you're going to find more than the 3 that I am asking, okay? But I'm going to ask you a minimum of 3. To just do that, it's something short. I am going to allow this time that if you want, you can work maximum in pairs, 2 people, okay? So you can work together. Maybe one takes one and the other takes the other one, and you do it in that way, okay? Please close attention to this. If you are going to work in pairs, it is absolutely necessary that each one of you uploads the same document individually. Yes? So let's imagine that you do the text and you finish it and you put it in a Word file. So please, you write in the heading members of the group, the names of those 2 people, and you upload them, each one of you. Why? Because if only one of you uploads the document, I won't be able to put the grade to the other person. Okay? So no matter it is the same document, and it's exactly the same thing as you're working in groups, you can upload the same document. Okay? And that's it. Yes, so you're just going to upload it, and that will be it. No problem. Okay, so remember, any question, please, you can text me. You can write it on the Q&A post that I'm going to post weekly over there. And do not forget about all the other, let's say, recommendations that I give to follow the course effectively. So thank you very much, and that was the end of the video. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, night, I don't know. Hugs.